Starting off at number 10, we have Father Divine. Father M.J. Major Jealous Divine was born around 1880, and he founded an independent Christian church in the 1920s. His church was mainly made up of African American worshippers, and when certain white people, though, objected to his church, well, he was sent to jail. And then 2 days after he was sentenced, the judge on the case just dropped dead, suddenly, out of nowhere. So they asked Father Divine about it, and he said, and I quote, "I hated to do it." So this case and his divine retribution made him very, very, very popular, and his followers accepted him as God on earth. During the Great Depression, his peace missions opened across America to feed people who couldn't really afford food. And he also preached that he wanted an end to racial segregation, and he's actually now recognized as an early civil rights activist, despite him being viewed as being God on earth. And in recent years though, just less than 20 of his followers remain. Number 9, George Washington. George Washington is generally seen in a class of his own because he was America's first president, and he really shaped the United States as we know it today. Now get this, if you go to the Capitol in Washington DC, you will be able to look up at the dome and you'll see a painting of George Washington. This painting here is called the Apotheosis of Washington, and in the painting he's shown flying up to heaven. Now, on top of this symbolism of George Washington being a god, he's also worshipped as a kami or deity or god in some branches of Hawaiian Shinto. Number 8 brings us to Sugawara no Michizane. Sugawara no Michizane was a scholar and poet in the 9th century Japan. He was a high-ranking person in society, and convinced that Sugawara no Michizane was plotting treason, the emperor banished him from the capital and made him the governor of a small island. This was a very disrespectful blow, like a slap in the face. But over when he was governing that small island, he passed away. And then in the years that followed, those who had worked to banish him just fell dead mysteriously. And the capital was actually hit with floods and fire and different types of plagues. So these were all linked to the vengeful spirit of Sugawara no Michizane. To appease his supposed spirit, he was reinstated to his high office even though he wasn't alive, and then he was later raised to the status of deity in the Shinto religion. Now known as Tenjin, he's the god of learning and scholarship. Jiddu Krishnamurti comes at number 7. Theosophy was a mystical philosophy popular in the 19th century and early 20th centuries. Some theosophists came to believe that the spiritual entity called Maitreya, or the world teacher, would come to lead the world into a new age. So back in the year 1911, one theosophist thought that he found Maitreya. As a young man, Jiddu Krishnamurti, he supposedly experienced these mystical visions of relatives who had passed away, and the theosophist took him from his family in India and taught him the ways of life of the Western world to eventually, hopefully, lead him to become the Maitreya to change the world. But hey, this Maitreya ended up not even really believing in any of this stuff, and he completely left the movement in the year 1930. He continued to teach his own philosophy though, but he didn't claim that he was God or anything. He was like, nah bruh, that's not for me. Number 6 brings us Antinous. In the Roman Empire, it was common for emperors to be raised to the status of a god after they passed away. Mothers, wives, children, you name it, they would also sometimes become gods too, especially if they were closely related to the emperor. Emperor Hadrian, however, made his young male lover Antinous into an object of a god. The two were inseparable. So even though certain homosexual acts weren't considered bad or shameful or anything like that, it was still very unusual and uncommon to flaunt that sort of behavior in public. It was a scandal though, but the emperor was too powerful for anything to happen to him in terms of public opinion, and in AD 130, Antinous, he drowned in the Nile under suspicious circumstances. Some people say he was murdered, some people say it was a suicide, maybe he was sacrificed, they don't really know. But either way, the emperor was devastated, so he built a city called Antinopolis, where Antinous had lost his life, and also shrines were set up in honor of Antinous throughout the empire, and he was worshipped as, or at least seen as, a god. Halfway to number 5, we have Lou de Pellingbor. Lorenz Vorthuizen. He was a Dutch fisherman who would become known as Lou de Pellingbor, which is Lou the eel seller, and he claimed to be the embodiment of God. Apparently, he came to this conclusion at the age of 29 years old, shortly after meeting his girlfriend at that time. And he claimed that he was immortal and had the ability to heal sick people. This led, of course, to some big problems when a 14-month-old child of one of his followers passed away because he did not receive medical care. So yeah, he wasn't healed. Lou himself passed away in the year 1968 in Belgium, and despite this, several people still keep faith in Lou and maintain a website to bring his teachings to the entire world. Imhotep comes in at number 4. The oldest standing monument of cut stone is the step pyramid of the pharaoh Zoser. While the pharaohs of Egypt were seen as gods, it was the architect of this tomb who would become a famous god. Imhotep was the pharaoh's chief advisor, and this pyramid has become one of the great symbols of the ancient Egyptian civilization. Within 100 years of Imhotep passing away, he was seen as a demigod with medicinal powers, and Imhotep 2,000 years later reached the status of a full god under the Persian Empire. I couldn't do this video without including Haile Selassie. Haile Selassie was the 225th and last emperor of Ethiopia. He's also known as Rastafari, and the incarnation of God and the Messiah in the Rastafarian religion. Although he gave Ethiopia a constitution which declared the emperor to be sacred, well, it was a prophecy from another part of the world that made him into a god. So Marcus Garvey campaigned for black rights in the country of Jamaica, which happens to be my home country where I was born. He also said, "Look to Africa when a black king should be crowned, for the day of deliverance is near." This was taken to be a prophecy. So when Haile Selassie was crowned in the year 1930, it looked as if deliverance was truly near. Also, many Rastafarians trace Haile Selassie's lineage back to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Those familiar with the history of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam will know the significance of King Solomon. But either way, in the year 1934, Italy invaded Ethiopia, and in 1936, Haile Selassie went into exile. Now, Haile Selassie returned to Ethiopia in 1941, and in 1966, Haile Selassie visited Jamaica and was greeted by thousands of Rastafarians at the airport. Now, he didn't outright deny that he was divine. So yeah, that's one of the big reasons why he's still revered as a god by Rastafarians today. Now, number 2 is just, yeah, okay. Prince Philip. Most people know Prince Philip as the husband of the British Queen, but did you know that he was also a god? On the island of Tana, a story exists of a son of a mountain god who traveled across the ocean to find a powerful wife. Now, this god was supposed to have pale skin. So when the villagers, they heard of Prince Philip, who actually did in fact cross the sea from his home to marry one of the most powerful women in the entire world, they came to see him as being a god. Now, in the South Pacific, groups have popped up based on having contact with Europeans known as cargo cults. And by performing certain acts, they believe that they will cause more technological advanced societies to deliver goods to them. So the worship of Prince Philip is just one form that cargo cults have taken. There are others, but I'm just talking about Prince Philip in this one. The followers of the Prince Philip movement hoped that he would one day come to live with them. But clearly that's not going to happen because we all know now that he passed away in the year 2021. And we end this episode off with Jesus, probably the most popular person on this list. Generally, historians agree that a man named Jesus of Nazareth, he did in fact exist. Now, most Christians believe that Jesus was both human and also God at the same time. While there has been a lot of theological debate over the nature of Jesus, Trinitarian Christians generally believe that Jesus is God in the flesh, God the Son, and fully God and fully man. Now, as God the Son, Jesus is worshipped by 2 billion Christians around the world, and Christians point to various passages in the Bible to support their claim that God would come in the form of a Messiah to be sacrificed for the sins of the world. Starting off at number 10, we have the universe. The concept generally falls under pantheism, which is a belief that reality is identical with the divine, or said in a different way, that all things make up an all-encompassing and transcendent God, and this is referred to as the universe. Now, the pantheist belief does not recognize a distinct personal God that has any definite form. It is believed that the universe is here to serve all, and we can attract people, circumstances, and thoughts into our lives all through the frequency of our dominant thoughts that we emit into the universe. Next up at number 9, we have Amun-Ra. Amun-Ra was the head of all the ancient Egyptian gods, and in the early Egyptian civilization, Amun-Ra was worshipped as 2 separate gods. There's Amun, who was the god who created the universe, and then Ra, who was the god of the sun and light. Ra is believed to travel across the sky every single day inside of a burning boat. The god Zeus comes in at number 8. One of the most popular gods in this episode is Zeus. And Zeus is a god of the sky, thunder, law, and justice, according to the ancient Greeks. He is viewed as the chief of the other gods, and usually Zeus is portrayed with a scepter in one hand and a thunderbolt in the other hand, and this symbolizes, of course, his dominance, his power, and his authority. The ancient Greek followers today are called Hellenists, and Zeus's name is thought to have originated from the ancient Greek word for bright. Also, another ancient Greek god, or Greek goddess in this case, Aphrodite. Aphrodite is the ancient Greek goddess of love, beauty, desire, and sexuality. Aphrodite had a much wider significance though than the traditional view as just being the goddess of love and sexuality. She was worshipped by men and women as well as heads of state, and she also played an important role in the commerce and the politics and warfare of ancient Greek. Aphrodite was worshipped as the protector of those that traveled by sea, as well as the protector of prostitutes. And she's also comparable to the Roman goddess Venus. Number 6 brings us Ganesha. Ganesha is a Hindu deity with the head of an elephant and the body of a human being. Ganesha is a son of Shiva and the goddess Parvati in Hindu tradition, and he grants success, knowledge, and wealth. In Hinduism, Lord Ganesha is worshipped to start off any sort of occasion or ceremony. Halfway in at number 5, we have the god Horus. Horus was a very important ancient Egyptian god. The name Horus means the one far above, and he's also commonly known as Heru or Har by the Greeks. Now, Horus was originally the sky god, but he's also known as the god of war, the god of hunters, among other titles, and he played the role of the protector of the ruler of Egypt. It's also from Horus where we get the all-seeing eye, which is linked to secret societies like the Illuminati. So very popular symbol. You can find this thing everywhere. Moving on now, we have Brahma up next. In Hinduism, the creation of the world and the universe and everything seen and unseen is attributed to Brahma. He's depicted as having 4 faces looking in each direction, and while Brahma is often credited as the creator of the world, he is described as being born from a lotus coming from another Hindu god, Vishnu. However, Brahma is supreme in the triad of the great Hindu gods, which includes Shiva and Vishnu. Now in Hinduism, there's a spiritual concept called Brahman, and it's believed to be far older than the deity Brahma. And many scholars say that Brahma may have come about as a personal conception and visible icon of the god that had no form, or the universal principle that Hindus called Brahman. The god Shiva comes in at number 3. Shiva is one of the most worshipped of all of the Hindu gods. He's viewed as Anant, which means infinite, and the god of the yogis. He's also the destroyer of the world, and he's given the title of destroyer, but in a positive sense, like, destroying the ego and attachment to old harmful habits. He's seen as a great purifier, and Shiva is also probably the most popular Hindu deity because of his unique attributes. Only 2 gods left. Number 2 brings us Allah. Allah is how Muslims refer to the one God. Now Muhammad, who was the final prophet in Islam, was a messenger of Allah, and it was believed that the angel Gabriel came from God and delivered the words of the Quran to the prophet Muhammad at the age of 40. And then at that time, Muhammad began to preach about Allah, that God is one, and that surrender to this God is the only way. And now Islam is the second largest organized religion in the entire world, next to Christianity. Allah is a being who's unlike any other, who has no set form, doesn't look like a human or any sort of creation. No one can see Allah, but Allah can see all. And finally, at number 1, the most popular god worshipped is Jesus. With over 2.2 billion Christians in the world, Jesus Christ is the central figure of Christianity and the most worshipped God in the world currently today. Unlike normal humans, it's believed that he lived in the heavens before he was born into the earth. And he's considered to be God, equal with God the Father, and also equal with the Holy Spirit. It's believed that the record of his teachings can be found in the New Testament of the Bible, and that he came to die for the sins of human beings, and then he ended up rising from the grave and ascending into heaven, and now Christians await for the return of Jesus. The type of God at number 10 is tutelary gods. Tutelary gods is a pretty broad category of gods that typically includes 2 forms of gods. The first type is known as genius, according to the Romans anyways. These are the personal guardian deities that every single person has. Now the second type of tutelary god is the guardians of the world, and they have been portrayed as river gods, mountain gods, gods that protect cities, and the forest gods. There are even lesser tutelary beings existing, such as the nymphs of certain springs or forests in Greek mythology. From there we move on to craft gods at number 9. Literally the gods of craft, but more broadly the gods who represent civilization and achievements of humans. Hephaestus, the Greek god of fire, is one example. Also there's Athena, who represented useful crafts such as weaving, and then there's Hestia, who was the goddess of the hearth, which is the floor of a fireplace pretty much. Then over in Egyptian religion, Ptah was the creator god and the maker of things and a patron of craftsmen. Also in Babylonian mythology, Mamu is the equivalent to Ptah. Nature gods is the next type of god. So in Greek mythology, they refer to these gods as rustic deities, and nature gods are the gods of countrysides and pastures, wild forests and things like that. Yet they are distinct from tutelary gods. These type of gods most often predate human life, and they represent animalistic desires and instincts. So one example is Pan in Greek mythology, who is the god of wild partying. Moving on to number 7, personifications. Personifications are minor gods who are literal aspects of human existence and emotion, but they are described or thought of as having human forms or human attributes. In Greek mythology, some of these types of gods are known as daimons. They generally are the gods or spirits of emotions like fear, lust, hate, revenge, and human conditions like old age or war, and certain sins like greed, gluttony, etc. Cyclical and liminal gods are number 6. Now, liminal and cyclical gods often overlap with other types of gods. They are the gods of boundaries, change, cycles, and liminal gods personify crossing over, while cyclical deities or cyclical gods embody the passing of an eternal cycle. So this can get a little bit tricky, but let me explain. Let me give you some examples. The changing of the seasons is often attributed to Persephone's movement back and forth from the underworld, causing spring, as well as the stages of life. That's personified as the mother maiden and crone. Then the stages of life are attributed to the mother maiden. And then there's also the Egyptian god Ra, who dies and is reborn with the sun every day. Halfway in at number 5, this god type is known as cultural heroes. Cultural hero gods are found in pretty much every single religion. They are often the same as trickster gods, but they're cultural heroes because they gave humanity something very, very important, usually against the wishes of other gods. Like, for example, Loki invented nets and gave humans the ability to fish. Prometheus stole fire from Zeus and taught humans how to make it. And cultural heroes are often punished by the other gods because they do things like this, but through their trickery and their just complete defiance of authority and pretty much just rebelling against what the other gods say, while they actually allowed humans to prosper in that process. Number 4 brings us to celestial gods. These gods, they personify or control the cosmological bodies of the universe. These include the sun, such as Apollo, the moon as Selene, and stars as Asteria. The planets, the heavens, as well as the underworld are also personified as gods. Celestial gods may overlap with primordial gods, which I'll be talking about next. So keep on watching, that's also a very fascinating one. But the main distinctions are that these gods walk in human forms at times, and they have human-like emotions, and they control but do not physically make up the thing that they personify. As mentioned, number 3 brings us primordial gods. Almost every single mythology and religion has at least one primordial god, but some have several of these types of gods. Primordial gods exist as the unknowable power that created the world and came before the more human-like gods. There's one god known as Pangu in Chinese mythology, then there is chaos in Greek creation mythology, and also the Abrahamic religions refer to a single god known as Yahweh or Elohim or Allah and other various different names. Although this concept of God is often seen as separate from primordial gods, since the attributes of the God of the Abrahamic religions are not necessarily split up into being various gods. But either way, this type of God created the universe, and the creation story will vary depending on the various different beliefs or mythologies that exist. Primordial gods may also have some sort of anthropomorphic form, such as the Greek god Nyx, who dwelt in a physical place, but others may not have any physical form at all, or any sort of physical manifestation. Primordial gods may be literal aspects or concepts such as day and night, light, darkness, chaos, order, life, death, or even the universe itself. And these gods, often their will is not known to mortals. Number 2, very interesting name, psychopomps. Yeah, psychopomps comes from the Greek word to mean guide of the soul. And these are deities who guide the dead to the afterlife. Probably the most popular is the Egyptian god Anubis, who leads dead people to the afterlife in Egyptian mythology, and Charon does this in Greek mythology. Psychopomps may also help those that are passing accomplish their last deeds, or they judge the dead on their entry to the afterlife. Now we end off on number 1, the triple goddesses. The triple goddesses is a deity or deity type honored in many neo-pagan religions and spiritual traditions. The triple goddess is viewed as a trinity of 3 distinct aspects or figures united in one being. Many religions have a triple deity of some sort, like the concept of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in certain branches of Christianity. Triple goddesses are normally determiners or predictors of fate in some way, and they may include the 3 stages of life: mother, maiden, and crone, who stand in for youth, adulthood, and seniority. Norse mythology has the Norns, and Greek mythology has the Morai, which means fates in Latin. And in Irish mythology, they have the Morrigan.